For many years, I served churches within the United Methodist Church. And as an ordained clergy, whatever that means, I can't help but reflect on what it was like to be in the midst of those rules and traditions of a denomination, of a religious body of believers. Sometimes I'm sad because being there within the United Methodist Church was extremely difficult. And the negatives outweighed the positives. But I was in between a rock and a hard place. And I was tied up in that position. My pension was a big factor. My health coverage was a big factor. If I were to cut and run, which I had thought many times to do, I might not have been eligible for health coverage in my retired status. And with all the things I was thinking about, one of the things I can't help but find myself doing is to compare what it was like being in that system and being here in the Unitarian Universalist Church, of which I am now a part of. In the United Methodist Church, as with many denominations that called themselves Christian, homosexuality was a huge no-no. Ministers were told if you officiated the same-sex weddings, charges will be brought against you. And you would be dealt with, more than likely they'd kick you out, no matter what your record was. Well, now this didn't measure up for me for what I thought what a church ought to be. In my simple brain of figuring things out, very simply, it didn't seem to me too compassionate, or caring, or giving, or loving at all to say that a segment of our population, your behavior prevents you from the full gifts and graces that this denomination has to offer people. And we believe that your sexual orientation, your sexual preferences are by choice. Seems to me, as long as they stood on that premise, all the really good that they were doing to help people was countered and dismissed because some people were not allowed certain avenues of the church that were just simply not allowed. That's why I've titled this sermon, All Means All, which says to Unitarian Universalists, everybody's invited to be here, to celebrate here, to stand with us here, no matter what your behavior happens to be. And the thing I love about Unitarian Universalist Church is that it includes, no matter what your beliefs or any particular thing, the bottom line, everybody is invited. Everybody's welcome. Now, can other denominations of faith communities say that as definitively? I think not. And that's very troubling to me because the Muslims are exclusive because they pitted themselves against something called infidels. Jewish people on any different level, Orthodox and conservative, are at odds with the Hasidim. They don't associate with or consider people who do not have their particular understanding of their faith or live it out exactly as they do. That's a huge dilemma that they face, that we face. What does it mean to you? All means all. Our Unitarian Universalist faith is a celebration of diverse beliefs. And it's one of our great strengths as we increasingly lead a diverse world. We don't have to mention how our country is divided on so many levels. The focus lately has been on politics. It's not just Democrats or Republicans or pro-Biden or pro-Trump. We're divided by opinions on race, on gender equality, and whether or not our religion really does require us to feed the hungry or welcome strangers. We're by an economic system that has created huge inequality among the haves and the have-nots. Or, as I like to say, the haves and the been-hads. We disagree about who is to blame and what we should do to fix the problem, or if the problem even needs fixing. We look around and we try to discern who's our friend, who's our enemy. We align ourselves with people that think the way we do. Immigration, climate change, and often we're unwilling to even listen to different points of view. For some people, even objective facts seem to be open to dispute these days. If the so-called facts disagree with their preconceptions about the way things are, we could be put in a box, neatly categorized and sorted. And we could choose to live isolated lives among our own people, and all the while remaining suspicious of other people who are not like us. What is our national motto? E pluribus unum, which means out of many, one. It seems impossible, naive, to have that kind of motto for the entire nation, the greatest superpower in the entire world. But there it is, a relic from an optimistic time, I'm sure, back in the day. Indeed, we are divided, perhaps the most we've been since the Civil War. I was speaking to a person this week who said they fear what's coming. They think that we're going to have a civil war. And I didn't debate that person because I happen to agree somewhat. I hope not, but there's a difference between divisiveness and diversity. But far too often, because of our distrust of the other, whatever form they may take, we allow our differences to create barriers where none should exist. In the worst moments, our biases evoke hostility, even violence. That is, those who are not religious at all, or those who say they're spiritual, but not religious. That's very convenient. Well, I'm not religious. I don't go to church, but I'm spiritual. Really? That's great. America is still predominantly a Protestant nation. They make it clear. There are sharp declines in their memberships, though, and small denominations like the Unitarian Universalist denomination are either in decline or experiencing no growth despite the fact that the nation is growing. In terms, I guess 1990, Christian and Protestant, those two words, used to be virtually synonymous. Not any longer. That's no longer the case. Religion in America, you could say, is not what it used to be. Not 80 years ago, not even 50 years ago. And the march toward a more secular and religiously pluralistic society is likely to continue for many years to come. There will always be those of us drawn to traditional religion and spiritual searching. But we are again entering this unexplored area, aren't we? The territory in the American religious landscape. Dr. William Barber II, a man with profound liberation theology, preacher from grassroots America, who started the Poor People's Campaign, says that some people say they are nationalists, and that borders, he says, on heresy. Unitarian Universalists embraced religious pluralism a long time ago. So if we play our cards right, maybe we can experience a remarkable growth somehow in the future. I hope. The issues of the mainstream, the mainline churches, or should I say the tried and true known denominations, are today struggling with issues that Unitarian Universalists dealt with many years ago. From the early 1800s, they began to learn about Islam, about Buddhism, about Hinduism, about other religions, and many of them appreciated the diverse wisdom that these spiritual traditions express. There are some leaders who see faith in politics strictly as an either-or competition. You win by turning out your side and crushing the opposition. But Reverend Barber, who's been called like the closest person we have to Martin Luther King Jr. in today's contemporary America, has refined a third mode of optimism called fusion politics. What's that? What's fusion politics? It creates political coalitions that often transcend the conservative versus the progressive binary. The same forces, he said, demonizing immigrants are also attacking low-wage workers. The same forces denying living wages are suppressing the vote. These groups discourage voting from voting and make it hard as they can, so that they don't vote. Due to having skin in the game, so to speak, these august election officials flat out deny the evidence of anything like, climate change. And they refuse to act. These same people, are willing to destroy the earth. And they're also willing to deny tens of millions of Americans access to health care. Well, Dr. King used to say, America has a high blood pressure of creeds, but an anemia of deeds. And in every generation, we have had a moment to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. Right now. We will never be able to fix our democracy unless we fully look at poverty, the issues of inequality, the issues of morality, the issues of health care, the issues of education, the issues of the very rich and the very poor. And what we're seeing is the rich get richer and the poor are dissolving and going away into oblivion. The forgotten middle class are fighting to keep up so they don't become completely extinct. It's simply not true. And I've been told this by corporate heads. It's simply not true that paying minimum wage, $7.25 an hour, is necessary because to pay more would hurt business. It's simply not true. The dollar store, many of you have gone to that, Family Dollar, whatever you call that thing. $1.2 trillion profit they made last year. Trillion, not billions. $1.2 trillion. And as a gesture of kindness, they gave $10 million bonus to their CEO. Thanks for all you did for us. The notion that paying a living wage would not help our country is in itself enough crazy logic to try to have it. It's simply not true. President Roosevelt said on January 20th, 1933, that any corporation that didn't pay a living wage didn't deserve to be an American corporation. Christian nationalism attempts to sanctify oppression and not liberation. It attempts to sanctify lies and not truths. It's a form of theological malpractice, and at worst, it is a form of heresy. In the founding documents that our elected representatives sign on for, they swear allegiance, promote the general welfare of all the people. Well, you're not promoting the general welfare of all people. When you get elected to Congress and you get free health care for yourself, but then you sit in Congress and block the very people who elected you to office from having the very same thing. You agree with that? And we also say equal protection under the law. It's fundamental to how we govern. Well, there's nothing equal about corporations getting those tax breaks and all kinds of ways to make more money while the average worker makes 300% less than the CEO. Who the hell are these people? That's all I want to know. To have this level of inequality existing is a violation of our deepest moral, constitutional, and religious values. It's morally inconsistent. It's morally indefensible. It's economically insane. Why? Why would you not want to lift up 55 to 65 million people out of poverty if you could do that by paying them a basic living wage? I don't know. Why would you not want that amount of resources coming to people and then coming back into the economy? In the summer of 1969, remember that song? In the summer of 69, I made $1.25 an hour. I did. And then we got the raise. They raised the minimum wage to $1.65 an hour. And we thought we were millionaires. And some of you are saying, yes, and you know what I'm talking about. What is religion about anyway? What is it? The healing of the brokenhearted, the welcoming of all people, caring for the least of these, the immigrant, the hungry, the sick, the imprisoned. Transcendentalists in the country were drawn to Eastern philosophy that emphasized the unity of all things. And just around that time, when science was really on its get-go, you had Darwin's theory of evolution. Oh, that bolstered humanism that has become the dominant identity for Unitarian Universalism. And I remember reading, by the late 1800s, there was a very strong debate about where Unitarianism or Universalism was as a Christian faith. Or is it something else? And they're still debating that. It's still coming. It's still happening. Our spiritual ancestors were quick to recognize danger lurking, the futility of exclusivism among religious traditions. And that's what we've become. Exclusive. We've continued to expand, though, our inclusive faith right here. We've continued to open the doors and hearts to anyone who wants to join us on the journey, as long as they're willing to abide by our values and principles. These days, Unitarian Universalists identify as Buddhists or pagan or Christian or Jewish and human spiritualists, and we've included them in our ranks. Standing with LGBTQIA and all the other letters after that, and transgendered youth, here are devout believers, and they are atheists and agnostics and a whole bunch of other people in the middle. What we believe matters. It would be hard to be a bigot or a fundamentalist in the Unitarian Universalist Church. It would be very hard. We celebrate diversity and mutuality. Our faith communities are joined in a covenant relationship of love and respect. And in this country, in the country I love, you love this country too. I know you do. We've been called the Great Experiment. And our young republic was rare. Something new in the global politics of that time. A nation with the government representing the consent and will of the people. That was radical. It was democracy where ideally, at least, diverse voices and beliefs could be heard and debated and resolved, define common ground, promote the goodwill of all citizens. We're not perfect. And we've been criticized because of the practice of slavery in this country as being contrary to our professed love of liberty and equality. And then as now. It was largely the white male landowner whose voices enjoyed the privileged position of political dialogue. But despite those imperfections, and many more, it's a glorious and messy experiment based on an idea that diverse people could create a better world of voluntary community. That we could actually have a say in what is happening. And I believe the Unitarian Universalist faith is similar to the great experiment in religious diversity. In that decade, many decades since 1961, you had two different groups that were afraid of becoming extinct. You had the Unitarians and you had the Universalists. So they merged. And we have established something called the 7 Principles through a grassroots process of democracy. And this is supposed to guide our diverse spiritual journey. These principles are not dogma. They're not doctrine, like you see a lot of other religious traditions. They're a statement of shared values for how we join together in worship and in the exploration of the sacred and the meaning of life. Personally, I'd like to keep those 7 principles because they're in and of themselves expressive of what Unitarian Universalists are. Article 2 notwithstanding. It is true, we sometimes fail to live up to principles, and we claim to embrace those principles, but we try very hard. And though I have mixed feelings about the controversy of white privilege, these days I think it reflects our serious focus on how we view those principles. Sometimes I fear we can be too critical of ourselves as a body, and I hope not. I can only wish that more people would become aware of and enlightened by what the Unitarian Universalist Church is all about. There's so many people hurting in the world, and for the kind of inclusive spirituality that we offer, our religious diversity is inherently welcoming, because we've embraced a universal understanding of the human story. We found ourselves as the vanguard of social justice movements, to the abolitionist struggle, to the women's suffrage, to marriage equality. Both the Unitarian and Universalists were among the first denominations to ordain female clergy. And they're leading the way on the ordination of LGBTQIA clergy as well. We've had many diverse voices of our faith. Many ecologists will tell you about the ecosystems. There's a strength and richness in diversity that's greater than the sum of its parts. And I think it's as true of religious movements. We're simply better together when we share unique insights and perspectives. From lighting the chalice to expressing religious and cultural diversity, we find many inspirations from other sources. We value diversity in others, and we take seriously the phrase, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." No single religion has a lock on the truth. People who make up our diverse faith communities recognize, and none of us is fully ourselves without joining others in the search for truth and meaning. We complete each other. I like that phrase. Pluralism is not always easy, though. And sometimes we may lock horns about the truth. And whatever meaning they may have embraced along the way. There's a difference between diversity and divisiveness. There's a wonderful saying that's usually attributed to Francis Davis. I think it's really good. I think it's really great, in fact. You know, that Transylvanian Unitarian who lived in the 16th century. It goes, "We need not all think alike to love alike." And I like that. It's a message that encapsulates our faith like no others I know. It's a message that America could surely use these days. As Americans awaken to the virtues and challenges that come with greater diversity, perhaps the time has come for our Unitarian Universalist faith to become that city on the hill which our Puritan ancestors dreamed of, and show the world what beloved diverse community really looks like. A wise person once told me, "Don't ask why are you still alive or why are you still breathing. The question is, what are you going to do with the breath you have?" None of us know the day or the hour when we're going to leave this earth and end our life and to be dead. We don't know. At any given moment, we're steps from death. So I decided, whatever breath I have left, it's too precious to waste on hate, on oppression, and on being mean to people. It's only to be used for the cause of peace with justice, because no justice means no peace. Could you join with me? No justice. No justice. No justice. Thank you, Milo.